One. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the weekly Velero community meeting / open discussion. Today, we have a bunch of things that we want to go through. So as per usual, I'm going to share the agenda here, and then we're going to have Nolan start off.
Yeah, so primarily I've been working on the CRD restore issues. They had been on mostly with Velero 1.2 and Kubernetes 1.16, but Scott Seago from Red Hat brought to our attention that the fix we introduced actually introduced a regression because there's an upstream bug in the runtime.from unstructured function that needs to get fixed. So we need to submit a bug report upstream, but in the meantime, I'm going to redo the code so that we don't do the conversion, that we just work with the unstructured types so that we just avoid doing the whole conversion and therefore sidestep the bug. But the fix for upstream doesn't look huge. It's just going to have to take some time to get through the upstream process. So I'm hoping to get that in today, and then hopefully we can get that out. And Steve has a discussion item for later on exactly how we get that released. We had thought about doing it for 1.2.1, but we're thinking maybe just do a 1.3. So that's been the main thing I've been chasing down, is testing that on various versions, testing that with different CRD sets. But Scott had a sample one that ran into this particular issue, and he kind of pushed back on us. So thank you, Scott, for making sure we address this. And then the second major thing was working with Ashish on tracking down current CSI support on the big three cloud provider CSI drivers. The main thing there is about 2 weeks ago now, going on 3, the CSI snapshot common controllers had a new update. The v2.0.0 images went live, and currently no CSI drivers support that. Part of the reason is that these new versions of the CSI snapshot APIs and CRDs need Kubernetes 1.17, which is still pretty new for a lot of providers. For example, GCP's rapid release channel is still on 1.16. So going forward, we're going to still develop Velero against the CSI snapshot version 2.0.0 codebase and using the v1 beta 1 CRDs. We've filed issues against each where they exist. Where they didn't exist, we filed issues on the drivers repos, and we're going to use the demo hostpath driver that the common controller repo has to show kind of how it's supposed to work. I think Ashish has an update against that. And yeah, we're gonna try to help these cloud providers where we can. Hopefully we can go through and update their code imports and their YAML manifests, and hopefully that takes care of it. But part of that will be on them to get their offering updated to have Kubernetes 1.17. So that's most of what I've been doing over the last week. And there's been some data protection working group discussions, mostly early days there, kind of figuring out how we're going to work together and figuring out what topics we're gonna tackle, and starting to bring together kind of philosophy and what things to protect, whether it's the Kubernetes metadata or volume data and things like that. So think that's pretty much all I've got.
Awesome. Any questions, comments for Nolan? All right. I know both Nolan and Ashish have to leave early, so we're going to move over to Ashish.
For me, it's the same update as Nolan for CSI with our findings from last week. The path forward for us is to kind of test Velero against the hostpath plugin. So I was like trying to make progress on that front. I'm currently kind of figuring out the various like sidecars and what they all do for the CSI driver, and also how do we want to bundle up that as a deployment. Looking at the various drivers, looks like there is like a lot of fragmentation, or like for example, the host path plugin is deployed as a stateful set with each of the sidecars are not as sidecar containers, but as individual stateful set with all running as privileged pods on the same nodes with pod affinity. So I want to kind of spend time to narrow down on what a deployment of a CSI driver should look like, and maybe try and either take ideas from the other CSI driver implementations, or like kind of influence their their deployment. So that's pretty much what I've been doing, and on community support this week. So kind of taking care of the PRs and the open issues that come in. If there is something that I've dropped the ball on, please let me know. Yeah, that's all I got.
Ashish, have you been able to actually get a hostpath CSI driver environment set up yet, or are you still working on that?
I've been able to like follow and get it to run, but I'm not sure it works the way I want it to. So that's what kind of got me to think about how if the deployment is set up correctly, and if I've deployed all the components necessary and stuff.
Got it.
So I was like battling through the YAML for that, and kind of understanding what exactly it's doing behind the helpful scripts that are in the repo.
And
Got it.
And have you asked Xing about the questions you've had? Because she's developed most of that.
Okay, I haven't asked or spoken with Xing about this, but I will. Right, so far it's just been me spending time to figure it out. If I feel it's taking longer than I want it to, I will definitely ping Xing.
Yep, and I think the CSI channel upstream may be the best avenue for that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on that channel, so I will ask questions there.
Cool.
All right.
I also feel there is like, sorry, Jonas, but I also feel there is like value in us understanding, because we have to work with all three CSI drivers, or potentially four, even support the host path for test environments, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, ideally we won't have to understand it beyond maybe community support requests. Yeah. But yeah, for now it's worth knowing. But yeah, if you have questions and if things could be explained better, it's worth talking to Xing, and we can get PRs up there to better explain documentation. If it's just that things aren't clear, we can explain it, or if there needs to be architecture redone or things like that, she would be the one to talk to.
Okay. Yeah, I think documentation wise, we are in pretty good state. It's just that the documentation is not there in the place that you would expect it to be in. It's not in the repo, but it's in the associated Git book. It's just it has just been the matter of figuring out where that documentation is. Back to you, Jonas.
All right. Any other questions, comments for Ashish? All right. Thank you. Kaliesha.
Hey, I am all caught up on PR reviews. There were a few, and except two, which I'll get to right after this meeting. I felt like updating the resources page. So there is a page on our website that lists blog posts that were written by community members and any podcast or video related to Velero. So I added a bunch that were missing from the page, and if anybody knows of any resource that's not listed there, it's in a PR at this point, but it will be updated today. So if anybody knows of any resource that's not there, let us know. I'll be glad to include it. I've been contributing to discussions and revision of a submission for a VMware internal conference called Radio for a Velero related topic, and the submission was today. So that's sort of got me sidetracked last week. I also participated in the data protection meeting, which I think is great. It has been great because they are really starting from the basics, defining things, what things are. Nobody is jumping ahead and assuming that everybody is on the same page as far as what things mean. So I think they're starting from a great place. And there's a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time too. Is in thereafter every 2 weeks, if anybody is interested. And I have to get back to the CLI design doc. That's been dangling, but I will be tackling that today too. And that's it for me.
All right. Any questions for Kaliesha there? All right, moving right along. Steve.
Yeah, no major updates for folks here. Just lots of PR reviews and spending some time with Nolan looking at the CRD, the multitude of CRD backup and restore issues and sorting through those. Those have been the main things. So we can probably just jump into the discussion topic, and I bumped mine to the top just because I know Nolan needs to leave midway through. So we had Nolan mentioned before, but we originally were talking about pushing out a 1.2.1 bug fix release with some of the CRD issues. But I was thinking we might just want to push out a 1.3 once those bugs are fixed. I mean, we've got something like 70 commits in master since we released 1.2 back in November, and I don't really see any reason to hold them up, and we haven't really made any progress on CSI yet, given the just kind of the timelines of things. So I was sort of thinking we might just want to push out a 1.3 once those bug fixes are ready, and then we can keep working on the CSI stuff, and we'll just label it 1.4 for the next release, and it doesn't necessarily have to impact the timelines in any way. Just depends on how much progress we make on the CSI stuff. But so yeah, just wanted to get folks' thoughts on that and whether that makes sense.
Thumbs up for me.
Thumbs up from me as well. I know we wanted to get the CSI stuff also in 1.3, and looks like we are going to slip there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it'd kind of just be a shuffling. Like, we could still release 1.4 at the end of March, which was our original timeline for 1.3. So it's just sneaking an additional minor release in before then and relabeling that release. But given where we are with CSI, I feel like it's possible that timeline will push out a little bit as well. In which case, I'd rather not go like 4 months between releases. So I think it'd be valuable to get all these patches that we've got in since November.
I completely agree. I think we should try to get 1.3 as soon as possible, just to get a more stable release out to the community and fix some of the issues we've been having, and then plan for 1.4, whether that ends up being March timeframe right after Kubernetes ships, or if we need to push it by a week or so, that still that still works.
Yep, I would. Yeah, and like given the state of other like the CSI drivers upstream, like we're in small ways we're a little bit ahead of other places. So it doesn't make sense to me to run too far ahead when our dependencies like aren't like if we can't really back up CSI drivers if there aren't, or CSI volumes if the drivers aren't ready. So I think getting a 1.3 out with these fixes, because it's affecting people with 1.2 installs, I think that makes sense. And just given that the CSI functionality that we want relies on 1.17 becoming more mature and more available, and that's simply going to require time. I don't think there's a huge rush on getting the CSI stuff out now. So yeah, I'm fine cutting a 1.3 and trying to hit the still trying to hit the March timeframe, but like at this point the CSI stuff is very much bleeding edge in beta. So we can get it there and iterate on other stuff as well, but it's not like we're trying to, with CSI, it's not like we're trying to deliver, that's not trying to deliver a new GA feature, right? Even if we deliver the CSI stuff in March, it's that's still going to be a beta feature set. So yeah, I really want to get the CSI stuff out. I know I've been saying this week for several weeks on it now, and I want to get that out of the way. Hopefully this int64 float 64 conversion stuff is the last of it, and we can get people doing their CRDs correctly. And there is one more fix that we're going to have to put in for, like Steve and I had talked about, having a more long-term fix for the CRDs that we'll have to do. But yeah, I'm for the topic at hand, I'm for getting a 1.3 out instead of a V1.2.1.
Okay, sounds good. And yeah, if we have, well, I think you're out next week, right, Nolan?
Yes, I am moving next week, and then I plan to be back the week after.
Okay, so I may be able to spend some time next week looking at some of the refactoring we talked about for the discovery stuff. But okay, so I think that'll be our plan then. We'll sort of figure out what the timeline is going to look like, but first focus is just getting the fixes tested and in, and then we'll figure out what the release timeline looks like.
The other thing that we can use community help from is understand what releases our users are using. That will kind of help us form or like time our releases. If there is not much demand, or if there aren't many users using 1.17 at this moment, even if we were ready with CSI, there wouldn't be much value that we would be adding to our users. So knowing where our users are would be really helpful.
And also, I had a question regarding this. So towards the end of last year, I filed a bug, possible memory leak issue. And at that time, since it was really close to the 1.2 release, that was marked as a milestone for version 1.3. So with this change now, how does that affect some of those, like that bug? I think it was 2069, that's the issue ID. Will that now be moved to 1.3 and expect that to be, 1.4 and expect that to be out end of March? How does that affect us?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. We'll have to look at, what else besides CSI is in there. I mean, I know, we have that one labeled as a P1, but I spent some time looking at it, but didn't totally get to the bottom of it. So I'd say, one of us can probably take a look at that over the next few days and see if we can sort out what's going on there.
Okay.
If we can get a fix in for 1.3, we'll do that.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, and I'll be available. Sorry for the the holiday breaks and all that. Wasn't able to get that update going on, but I can be able to chime in if you need my help.
Okay, sounds good. No worries.
Okay.
So what's the timeline of the 1.3 release? We're thinking next week or?
I don't know yet. I mean, we just need to get the fixes in and then, figure out if we want to do a beta. So not quite sure, but we can update once we figure it out. I'd say, probably in the 1 to 2 week time range is reasonable.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other questions, comments regarding this? All right, Kaliesha.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up this pull request that Steve opened. I'm not sure if we need to get consensus, if we're ready to migrate to 1.3. I tested this yesterday and it seems fine. I pulled this branch and ran the test on my local machine. It works perfectly. Are we ready to go with this or no?
I think it should be ready. The main thing was I wanted some other folks to test it in their environments to make sure that, my environment wasn't a snowflake and that it was working. Let me take another pass through it because it's been, I think, 2 weeks since I last touched it, and just make sure that there aren't any other to-dos that I'm aware of. But if other folks have some time and could test or, do a quick review of it, that'd be helpful. I think it's ready for review.
I did a quick pass and I had one comment that I just posted.
Okay, thanks. I'll check it out.
I'm curious, did anyone, or have we updated the plugins to run with this too?
That's a great reminder, Nolan. I don't think we have.
Okay. And the other question is...
I don't think they have to be tied, do they?
They don't have to be. I'm just curious. That's mostly out of curiosity.
Okay.
And then the other question was, when people tested this, were they testing the build or are they testing that it ran and did backups and restores?
Good question. I just ran the tests.
That's
So
that's valid.
When I took the first pass, I had done a backup and restore.
Okay.
But that was with my controller gen and client gen changes, or without those, which is kind of similar to the state we are in right now. Right, Steve?
Sorry, say that again.
So when I took a first pass at this, I made a change without modifying the code generation stuff. So this is kind of similar. The change that you have up for review is kind of similar to that. We are not changing the controller gen and the client set gen.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I had done a backup and restore at that time, but I can try that out as well.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't looked at this. That's one of the things I'm behind on is PR reviews. And I know Adnan had when we had moved some of the CRD definitions around, he had done a bunch of stuff in the make file or in the hack directory for generating the CRDs, and there was some stuff with the client code gen and all of that he was turning on and off. Go module support. So does this? I should probably just read the PR.
Yeah, I would say go through the PR. I mean, I broke it up into commits that kind of go through it step by step. So there's, there's like there's the dev build, and then there's the generation stuff. For the most part, everything's running with modules, but there are some quirks to a couple of the code generators around where they need to be located and where they expect the code that they're operating against to be located. So hopefully those things are commented, but I may need to improve the comments.
Okay, I'll try to look at this today and give feedback. But if you're ready to move it out of draft, Steve, then cool.
I'll circle back on it and do that if I'm ready.
And I have the next one too. So this is a pull request that has been sitting, that's been there for a while, and we've been going back and forth. I just wanted to bring it up in case somebody has any strong opinion one way or another. I mean, I think at a higher level is, does this go into Velero? And if the answer is yes, then we can work on it and refine it. And if the answer is no, I think we could move on. I think this sounds more like it could be an operator that uses Velero rather than adding this functionality in Velero. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, I actually asked, I think it's Niall. I asked them to submit this design doc, and I requested a bunch of changes, and I think they've dropped off and maybe lost interest. But I agree that I think some of this could be in core Velero, but also I believe all of it could be outside Velero. Like all of this could be done outside Velero. Most of the, well, there's some parts of it where there's parts of it that are like AI. I think that are like catch a delete request and then do a backup and then resume, or like determine what might be useful and then block the deletion. So most of my reviews have been, can you please go into more detail here and like start giving implementation details. So if someone else wanted to pick this up and run with it, I'm not opposed to it. If this got pruned down, I could see parts of this making in core Velero, but yeah, as is, no.
Yeah, so I think at the very least we should prune this and see if anything we want to add, anything from this we want to add to Velero. I personally would love to know if other people are requesting any of the things that are being suggested here. I would not add any of it if there are not more requests.
Yeah.
So if people want to read through this and let us know, oh yeah, I've seen people needing this, or I needed this, it would be nice for me. If I'll be a lot more motivated to prune this and work on it if other people would say that this is a feature that would be useful. I haven't seen other people requesting something like this.
Yeah, I've heard. Go ahead.
I'm actually making an operator that uses Velero as like, I'm basically making a Velero provisioner as like a dynamic provisioner for a storage class. But it's a lot harder for me to make like from scratch a storage class type provisioner for Velero. So I just went down the easy path of whenever there's a stateful set replica increase, basically I have a custom resource definition that is a wrapper for that, and then it performs a Velero restore. It labels those persistent volumes and adds a claim ref for a PVC that I know it's kind of deterministically like accounted for because it's a stateful set. The name of the claim ref is known, and that way I can spin up a bunch of these blockchain full nodes with with almost real-time data, and I'm using Velero as like the back-end provisioner for that. So I can definitely see where somebody would want to make an operator using Velero, but I also kind of agree that it doesn't belong in your source tree. This could be like a plugin kind of thing, although not really the plugins the way you guys use them, but more just like this is how you hook into the Velero API to do whatever you need in the back end. But there are definitely extensions people are building on top of Velero.
No, I think this, for example, is a perfect use case for an operator, because for us to understand and compile together all the use cases where when people will want to take a backup. For example, if X happens, I want a backup, but the other person, if Y happens, I want to take a backup. For us to incorporate all of that into Velero, I think is not a good idea. Velero, it would be Velero and an orchestrator of Velero. And so that would totally be appropriate to be an operator. So each individual person, company would have their own that will fit their particular needs. And Velero is just in the business of doing backups and restores.
Yeah, and this is something I had told Niall that like this is I can totally see that this is something you can build outside of Velero without existing in the Velero core tree. So I think it would be appropriate to set a deadline. Like if Niall doesn't come back to it, then we can close it out, say a week or so, if that long. But yeah, it's gone through a bunch of it's gone through some revisions, but as the document is, it's kind of a wish list, not a design document.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make an update to this PR and say, unless we can gather some strong opinions for having any of these requests in Velero, and we'll wait for some time, we are not going to consider doing any of this. But we're not going to consider refining it either, because it doesn't make sense to go in the Velero. Anybody disagree with this?
Yeah, I think I've seen other projects call this like a lazy consensus, where they say, we'll have a lazy consensus, and then by March 15th, sum it up, and if it's not
So
I think we lost you there, John.
I think we lost John.
yeah.
But I agree with the sentiment, you know, lazy consensus. We can just ask anyone to speak up if they object. But yeah, I agree with what's been said already.
Yeah, and if someone comes back later, we can reopen it.
Yeah.
But I have to jump off now, so I'll see y'all later.
Yeah.
Bye, Nolan. All right. I think the only thing we got left for today are the contributor shoutouts. Steve.
Yeah, just a couple since last week. Citanato Carlos has been doing a bunch of work in Helm and in the core Velero repo. This past week, he got some really helpful docs for how to get auto completion for the Velero CLI setup. So this was something that we've had support for quite a while, but the docs have not explained what the prereqs are and exactly how to set it all up. So he contributed some really extensive and well-organized docs for getting this set up across a bunch of different platforms. So appreciate that contribution. And then we also had SH4D1, sorry, I don't know the actual name, who submitted a patch to bump the Rustic version to the latest released version. So I appreciate that as well.
Awesome. Any last questions, comments for the meeting here? Oh, John, you're on again. I actually have a question for you. If you're not frozen again. I think I'll take that question to Slack. Yeah, so with that, do we have any other questions, comments for the meeting before we sign off? All right. Thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.